This video was brought to you by NordVPN. With a lot going on in the UK right now, it's understandable if you've missed news on any bills going through Parliament. Granted, we're currently in parliamentary recess, but before this happened, we saw a number of bills receive royal assent. One such bill was the Animal Sentience Bill, which aims to create a new mechanism to hold ministers accountable for ensuring that new bills take into account the sentience of animals. It's now officially on the statute book, having received royal assent on the 28th of April this year. So let's have a look into this now Act and see whether it does actually go any of the way towards improving animal rights in the UK. The first thing to note about this Act is that it's pretty short. At only 840 words, it's actually shorter than this very video that we're making about the Act. The main thing it does is create a new committee, known as the Animal Sentience Committee. Its members are to be appointed by the Secretary of State for DEFRA, currently George Eustace. At first glance, it may seem a bit iffy that the Secretary of State has the power to appoint new members of a committee designed to check the government, especially considering the Act doesn't detail how these appointments are to be made. In any case, appointments by a Secretary of State are far from new. Several educational bodies, for instance, have chairs and members which are appointed solely by the Secretary of State for Education, most notably the Office for Qualifications and Examinations Regulation, known more commonly as Ofqual. That's not to say that the Secretary of State has complete free rein to appoint whoever they wish. As the explanatory notes to the bill state, standard public appointments rules apply to appointments made by the Secretary of State. These public appointment rules can be found in the Government Code on Public Appointments, a document which is nearly 3 times longer than the Animal Sentience Bill itself. So yeah, there seems to be a few rules about who can be appointed. The bill states that whenever the government produces a policy, the new committee is entitled to produce a report on either whether or to what extent said policy may have an adverse effect on the welfare of animals. Additionally, the committee is entitled to include recommendations in their reports. The Act additionally stipulates that the government must respond within 3 months. So, in effect, the Act has set up a standard public committee. The key thing here, though, is that the committee can only produce reports on current and ongoing government policies. It doesn't have the power to produce recommendations on existing laws. This means, for example, that the committee cannot produce reports on animal sentience in relation to factory farming, unless a new bill about factory farming is going through the Commons. Nonetheless, a new committee whose job it is to ensure that future bills respect animals is something that animal rights activists will surely be in favour of. After all, it's one of the first times that animal sentience has been rigidly defined and defended in UK law. The definition itself goes as follows. An animal is sentient if they have a vertebrae, if they're a cephalopod mollusk, or if they're a decapod crustacean. Additionally, the Secretary of State can include several invertebrate animals in the definition if they believe they meet the standard for sentience. The issue of animal sentience is quite a tricky one, and the fact that there is flexibility in the bill can only be a good thing. While scientists are in agreement that certain animals are sentient and can feel pain, enjoyment and fear, the line does blur very quickly. The word sentience comes from the Latin for feeling, and is generally today understood to mean that something can feel. It's distinct from being able to reason. A good example of animal sentience is that of goats. Research has shown that goats demonstrably become frustrated when they expect food and it doesn't arrive, and when they become isolated from members of their herd. So, if there's evidence an animal can feel, then it seems that they fulfill the criteria. The thing is, though, while animal rights groups like PETA have seen this as a win, it's clear that the bill doesn't really go that far in improving the rights of animals in the UK. As the new committee cannot act on legislation retroactively, there's no way of it really stopping some of the worst instances of animal abuse, for example that of factory farms. As long as no new legislation is proposed that makes factory farms any worse, the committee cannot speak out against it. For example, there are more than 1,000 so-called mega farms in the UK, which hold more than 125,000 birds for meat, or more than 82,000 egg-laying hens in cramped conditions. In fact, there are 4 poultry farms in the UK that house more than 1 million birds. Animal rights activists claim that these factory farms cause huge amounts of suffering to animals due to their squalid conditions, whereas the National Pig Association argues that larger farms aren't actually necessarily worse for animals, as they have more resources to facilitate good animal welfare. Either way, the Animal Sentience Act will do little to improve the welfare of animals in such farms. Additionally, the Animal Sentience Act just doesn't have that much teeth. While it's able to criticise the government for not taking into account animal sentience in their legislation, there's no guarantee that the government will listen to their reports and adjust their legislation accordingly. The government can just respond to their criticism by saying that they disagree and think that their legislation does take into account animal sentience, which is only helped by the vagueness of the Act itself. It only states that the government has to have due regard for how legislation may have an adverse effect on the welfare of animals as sentient beings. This looseness certainly gives the government scope to debate what due regard and adverse effect mean. So, all in all, while the Animal Sentience Act is a good start and will create a mechanism for the government to be held accountable on animal welfare issues within future legislation, the body it creates has limited power and limited scope. Going through this act and finding out that it's only the starting point for improving the lives of sentient animals may have left you feeling a bit, well, down. So, if you want to cheer yourself up, then how about streaming something a little happier? But if you want access to a whole world of content, the only way to do that is with a VPN.
It's a full suite of tools to secure your digital life, from blocking malware and preventing malicious ad trackers to helping you set more secure passwords. And there's fun stuff too, because using NordVPN, you can access the internet through other countries, which means that region-locked content is available to you from anywhere. And as they have over 5,400 servers in 59 different countries, there's a lot of choice. So when you're at home, you can stream movies and films that aren't on your streaming services. And when you're away, you can still log in via your country, preventing all of your apps from freaking out and thinking that you're being hacked. So NordVPN really is an all-in-one security solution. And with the fastest connection of any VPN out there, now's the time to get yourself protected. So if you sign up for a 2-year subscription using our link, you'll not only get a massive discount, but you'll also benefit from their 30-day free trial to give you some peace of mind while you find out how much you love it. Anyway, thanks for your support, and thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring TLDR.